Hi, this is Clarity Coach Lucy, and this is Tuesday Talks at 3. Welcome to episode 4 of the Mindful May series, and today it's all about empathy versus mindfulness. We are celebrating the month of May, which is all about mental health, your mental wellness, your mental well-being. Now, this series has 5 episodes, and it's all about focusing on that area of your life, taking time for you just to pause and figure out, who am I? What am I about? How do I respond to self, to others, and to the environment around me? What is my environment around me? It's about you getting motivated and staying motivated. It's about you having empathy, which we're going to be looking at today. And last but not least, it's about social skills. How do I respond to these stimuli around me? Not only that, stimuli within me. Well, in episode 1, we touched on emotional awareness. And this was that emotional self-awareness where we used 2 tools to be able to help us to get to the crux of the matter. And you want to hop onto my YouTube page to catch episode 1 recording, because there you will find that you could choose a preferred emotional state by looking at your emotional self-awareness. What about the accurate tool, which is the accurate self-assessment tool? This one was identifying who you are. Who am I? What does it mean to be myself? Sounds like very simple aspects, but the very nature of you carrying out this process allows you to be in touch with who you really are. And just to reintroduce yourself to yourself sounds weird, it's a mouthful, but hey, that is what self-awareness on the first episode was all about. Our second episode, we touched on self-management. Now that you know who you are, we asked, how should I feel in this moment? Because once you know who you are, you start to being aware of, or you start to become aware of your emotions. And man, are there many emotions that we experience every moment. Because as those thoughts are happening, the emotions are happening. We're emotional beings. So knowing what to do with them when, that was your self-management. And that helps you with your mental health. And the third episode, which we did, was all about motivation. Getting motivated and staying motivated is usually the hardest part. We can work up our motivation. You could listen to Lucy today and get super motivated. But how do you remain motivated beyond this session? And it comes from within. And we quoted Jim Rohn when he said, the best motivation is self-motivation. So what does that look like for you was a question that I left you with in our last episode. Today, it's all about empathy versus mindfulness. Like finding where that bridge is, where it is that they meet. Well, in this session, we explore 3 types of empathy. 3 types of empathy. I'm sure you wondered, empathy? Isn't it just one type? Well, today we're going to look at those 3 types and be able to see how we can strive to stay true to our mental wellness. You see, mindfulness in itself reveals a sense of well-being. And that is why it's so profound to be talking about mindfulness in this May series. So I hope that these 5 episodes that we are going to be concluding with in the last one are able to help you as tools, things that you can take away with, things you can keep on writing about, just so that you can have total recall, so that you can have this sense of knowing who you are and what to do with it. Now, within that concept of mindfulness, there are 3 components of the same. And the first one is intention. We've talked about this in the other episodes. So the first one is intention, which is choosing to cultivate your awareness intentionally. You're here. That makes a difference. You are here choosing to cultivate your self-awareness. Secondly is attention. Attention to that present moment. Many a times when we are in the present, we are so busy worrying about that future and stressing ourselves out. you need to refer to our last episode recording, or thinking about the past. Whereas the past should be used as a platform of learning that you can apply to better your moment today, we tend to be putting so much focus on the past or the future, forgetting to be in the present. How do I show up is what matters in this very present. Right now, I'm present with you. I should not, I cannot, I will not be thinking about the future or the next 5 minutes of this call. Neither should I be thinking about what happened yesterday or in the previous call. I am in the present. And I can see all of you joining on. Carol, Boss, great to see you. And is it Carol? Quality Services Limited. I do hope I've pronounced that well. Great to see you here. And today we're talking about empathy versus mindfulness. The third part, the component of mindfulness, is all about attitude. And we all know you can step into a room, and if you step in there with the right attitude, then we see you and we read from your attitude. You step in there with the wrong attitude, we also feel it, because we are beings and we feel, we see, we experience. So it is lovely to have you all here, and I want us just to jump right in and explore this empathy versus mindfulness. So what is the definition of empathy? If I was to ask you about that, and I know you would start to Google, you'll start maybe to go to a dictionary, but Google is easier because it's on that gadget that you're holding right now that you're here present with. Well, you would start to look it up, and you come to realize that it is the ability to sense other people's emotions. That is empathy. Yeah? Coupled with that ability to imagine what someone else is feeling, or what they might be feeling, what they might be going through. That's empathy, because you're tapping into that emotion. And that is a superpower when you have empathy. I absolutely love this word. When I came across it a couple of years before, I was more conversant with the word sympathy. But then clearly, when I saw the definition of sympathy and empathy, empathy is the one where I fit in, because I am an empath. I didn't realize that until I saw the definitions of the two. So I do hope that today you are seeing that there is sympathy, there is empathy, and we are going to be using empathy versus mindfulness to help us with our mental health. Oh, that was a mouthful, but I do hope you are with me. So the three types of empathy that psychologists have defined are cognitive, emotional, and compassionate. I'll say that again. They are cognitive, emotional, and compassionate. And these three types of empathy, they appear in progression. So you start with cognitive, you then progress to emotional empathy, and then you finish off with compassionate empathy. And it's so beautiful when you realize how this progression happens and how you make it part of your life in an intentional way. If you remember when we started off, I talked about the three concepts of mindfulness. There is the intention, there is the attention, and then there is the attitude that you step up into. So let's start with the first type of empathy, and that is cognitive empathy. And cognitive empathy, by definition, is just simply knowing how the other person feels and what they might be thinking. That is what it is. And at times it is referred to as perspective taking. Have you ever sat down and just decided to take in the scenery? Maybe you're sitting at a bus stop. Maybe you're in your car in traffic. Or maybe you are having a cup of coffee on your own, just taking me time, and you're watching the world go by. It's just a perspective. You are noting what is happening, not necessarily that you're going to use it. You're just allowing your senses to take in your environment, and therefore you are sitting back and you're relaxing. This is what happens. That is what cognitive empathy is. Now, I'll give it a bit more context. If, for example, you see a student going to school in the rain. Yeah, we're coming up to our rainy season, or rather we are right into our rainy season, and you see this student going to school in the rain. Remember, you're sitting back and you're just watching it happen. Your cognitive empathy registers that process, that this student is walking to school in the rain. Walking, you can see walking. dressed in school uniform with a bag, perhaps, and school shoes. That registers. It is a student, confirm. The weather, it is raining. So these are things that you are connecting, the dots that you are connecting. This is your mind. It's an intellect level. It is you making sense of what your eyes are seeing. And when you make sense of what your eyes are seeing, that is now the messaging that is coming through. And that's the cognitive empathy. Now, you might just be having passing thoughts and you're hoping that that student is perhaps warm. That's what you're thinking about, and that they'll get to school all right. And that process finishes, and then you go into another scenario. Remember, this is your cognitive empathy that is in place. You have taken note of what is happening. It is what your eyes are seeing and how your brain is responding. It doesn't put you in that student's shoes. It just allows you to see and have a perspective of what is happening. Maybe it's not even a student. Maybe it's just a child going home or a child running away from somewhere. But you have this perspective of your own. So enough of that for now. However, this is an opportunity for you to take on this intellect approach and start being aware of your own thoughts. Remember intention when we're talking about mindfulness? Well, this is where now they merge, the synergy happens. So cognitive empathy, as it is happening before your eyes, you can take the opportunity of taking it deeper. Because all this is about self-awareness. And some questions that you can ask yourself are, why am I choosing to perhaps think this thought? In the example I gave you, the thought of this child is perhaps warm and that they'll get to school all right. Why did you think that? Why did you not think another thought? Now these questions begin to allow you to dig deeper and discover who you are. What are you made up of? We are now going into emotional level. Why did you think of warmth and not something else? Why did you think that this child needs to get to school all right and not something else? Another question you could be asking is, how do these thoughts prepare me for a similar situation? Maybe it is me dressed, walking in the rain, going somewhere. Now that I have this cognitive recognition that has been parked in my subconscious that I saw happening to somebody else, how does it help me in the future? Or does it anyway? Maybe it doesn't. But then here you are having an interesting discussion with yourself. Remember, you are sitting alone and you're taking in the environment. So don't waste this opportunity. The next time you're sitting at a bus stop or having a cup of coffee or tea on your own, or maybe lying by the beach, or just standing at a top floor and looking down and seeing the world go by, whatever it is you're taking in on a cognitive level, begin to go deeper and ask yourself questions. What is my learning from what I am seeing outside the window? What is it? Perhaps it will prepare me for next time when I find myself in a situation like that other person. I guess the question you could also ask yourself is, why am I not moved to help? If you're driving by this student, why haven't you stopped and offered them a ride to where they're going? Or maybe given them the umbrella that is in your car? Or just given them the raincoat that's in your car? Good thoughts for you to have. So as you think about your cognitive empathy, you realize cognitive is just taking stock of what is happening. And that does not mean that you are in the shoes of that other person. Well, the second type moves us in progression. The second type is emotional empathy. And this is when you feel physically along with the other person, as though their emotions were contagious. And I must digress here right now. There is a meme that's been going around of a young boy holding a wooden spoon, and it has some ugali on it. And for those of you who do not know what ugali is, it is a food that we eat here in Nairobi, Kenya. And this is our staple food. And this little boy, he's holding it and he is giggling. He giggles so infectiously that every time I see this meme, it's as if I'm seeing it for the first time. And I laugh along with him to the point that today, when I'm in a situation where I think it is just so funny, that same emotion comes back that this boy gives me. This emotion of happiness, of joy. And I start to laugh like the little boy. And it's just so amazing that When you have these thoughts going through your mind and emotions get attached, you begin to relate them to your physicality. I become lighter. I become, how do I say? I become ready to move and do something. I stop feeling tired, but I have digressed. So these feelings are contagious when we have emotional empathy. But the one that is mostly used is a sad one. I'm a happy being, so I like to give happy examples. So imagine a situation where you see someone breaking down due to loss of a loved one. What happens to you? Well, you begin to feel the emotions welling up within you, even to the point where tears begin to run down your cheek. Yet you don't even know the person that passed away, or you don't even know the person who is crying. But what you've done is tapped into that emotion, that is into that empathy, and that is emotional empathy. You see how we've moved from cognitive to emotional empathy? In cognitive, it was a process. But when we come to emotional, we are tapping into that emotion of the other being, and we are now projecting it. We are now demonstrating it in our own behavior. This is the emotional empathy connection. It is the ability to understand and share feelings of another person. And the opportunity here is to pay attention to the emotions that you are experiencing. I beg your pardon. What is coming up for you as those tears roll down your cheeks? Ask yourself that question. The next time you watch a movie and there's something that is so emotional happening that you find yourself tearing up or getting this lump in the throat, ask yourself, what emotion is coming to mind for me? What is the trigger? Why am I connecting in with this person? What does that mean about me? Stop and make the connection. Be in the present and make that connection. What is your brain telling you? Is it confirming that indeed you are a human being and that you can feel? That means the lack of that could mean something. If that is happening and you do not feel the empathy, you don't feel moved yet, everybody else is feeling moved in the room, then you know that there's some attention that is needed to that part of your mental health. Maybe there's something blocking you. Maybe there's a trauma that you're dealing with and you don't even know. Maybe there's something you need to wake up to and work on. In this month of May, let us be aware of our emotions and how they make us feel. Let us tap into the emotions of those around us and pay attention to the present as to how they make us feel. Go into the 5 whys. Ask yourself, why am I not feeling anything? And the answer to that question, take a moment and internalize, and then ask why of it again. And you get to another level. And when you get to 5 levels, it is said that you will get to the crux of the matter. You will get to the bottom of the matter. Because all the first whys are just giving you the symptoms. They're just giving you the top layer. But when you go into the 5 whys, you get to the bottom. It works. You want to try it. But perhaps again, you could be asking yourself, what is stopping you from helping in this situation? This person is crying. They have a loss. What is stopping you from helping if this person is around you? Again, that is something to think about. Well, we'll move on to the 3rd one. And the 3rd one is called compassionate empathy. Compassionate empathy. Now, by definition, this kind of empathy, we are not only understanding cognitively the process, we are not only feeling with the situation emotionally, but we are spontaneously moved to help. And if you see what I've just done, spontaneously moved to help, to the point where your reaction is not, or rather your response is not one of thinking. Your body just moves. It's as if the connection has happened. I have seen the process. I have tapped into the emotion, and now I'm compassionate enough to do something about it. These are progressive emotions that happen with empathy. So where is it for you? Where can you apply your cognitive and just stay out of it? Where can you apply your emotion and just tap into yourself? Or where can you apply your compassionate empathy? As I said, there are 3 types of empathy. Let me give you an example so that by context we can understand what we're talking about. You may be at a restaurant and a fellow diner falls ill, maybe even topples over or falls forward onto the table. Your brain registers the event, and this happens in a split second. It is happening. You most probably saw it happen in slow motion, and you can relate to this. Now, immediately your brain registers it. Immediately your emotion checks in, because you can imagine what this person is going through or what the people around the table are going through, their fellow diners. But it is because you're tapping into an emotion. Perhaps you experienced this before yourself, or a loved one experienced it, or a colleague at work experienced it, or a student in school experienced it. But this is not a new area for you, and you're just diving in to do something. Whether others are diving in to do the same thing at the same time doesn't stop you having that bodily reaction. This is compassionate empathy, where you are moved to do something without even thinking. And the opportunity lies in exploring this response of you helping. Now, if you did not have the response of helping, then we know that you are just in emotional empathy, or you are just in cognitive empathy. You have not progressed to compassionate empathy. Some of us are on compassionate empathy 24/7. Some of us are just there forever. We always want to help, and maybe you recognize yourself in this. You want to ask, where is it coming from? Why am I always in this high gear? What benefit does it have for me? What are the pros and cons of being in compassionate empathy all the time? In my coaching, I come across clients who are suffering, and it becomes the negative side of compassionate empathy, where they feel every situation they have to be a part of it. And here I encourage them to be able to think and internalize cognitively first, where action is not required. They can take in the scene and allow it to move on. They are choosing their battles. Maybe that is you. Maybe you need to hear this today. Or they're so emotional that they're able to tap into their emotions and the emotion of the other person. And they choose which emotional state to be in. And therefore you allow yourself to be emotional from a distance. And I'm only saying this to those who are compassionately empathetic, compassionately empathetic all the time, that you find yourself dealing with others and not yourself. Remember, as we're talking about mental wellness, we start with you. So what unconscious preparedness do you already have within you that you are unaware of? And this is why you keep on responding. Think about security personnel and where you're seated right now. And if there was a security scare, anybody in that room in your vicinity who is of the security personnel or security background or security inclination, they are going to sit up. They're going to look around the room. They are going to seize the moment. They're perhaps going to pull out their weapons. There's a certain way that they will respond according to their trainings, but that is expected of them. Now, you and I have some kind of training that we are not aware of, and this has happened to us over the years, and it is in our subconscious. And therefore, some of us respond compassionately, and some of us respond emotionally, while others are responding cognitively. Which one are you? It is good for you to know where you belong. Now, can you apply this to self? Because although we are talking about these 3 types of empathy, the whole thing is about your own mental wellness. We talked about the awareness. We talked about the intention that you have. We talked about the attention to the present. But how about your attitude when you step into self and you ask yourself, is self-empathy important? It's a resounding yes, guys. Self-empathy is important, and it is key. Remember, when we looked at the definition of empathy, we said It is the ability to sense other people's emotions. Well, replace other people's emotions with my emotions. So self-empathy is the ability to sense my emotions. And then we said, coupled with the ability to imagine what someone else might be thinking or feeling. Let's change that round and say, and coupled with the ability to imagine and to know what my thoughts are, what my feelings are, what my emotions are. And that brings us back to the emotional state. You being able to understand which emotional state you are in which time. And you ask me how. How, Lucy, can I do that? Let's give an example. Perhaps you have just received, as you sit there, you have just received news that you did not qualify for a position, for a job, or somebody did not pick you. And the feelings are of rejection. I know about rejection. I know about loss. I have experienced this over and over on a personal level. I have experienced this on a professional level. So I speak from personal experience. So what is your immediate self-language when you feel rejected, when you face rejection, when you feel loss, when you face loss? What is your immediate self-language on internalizing this loss and this rejection? What is it? And I ask you, does gratitude play a part? And you're like, whoa, Lucy, gratitude? I just lost something. I'm experiencing rejection. Where does gratitude come through? Well, for me, that's the end game, because I experienced rejection and loss so much over time that I came to realize that that is actually a gift to me. I am a believer of silver lining. And my silver lining, whenever something happens that is perceived as not a good thing, which is rejection and loss, I am grateful for it, because it opens me up to learn more things about myself. But I digress. Talking about rejection and loss, how do you treat yourself when this happens? Do you brush it off? Do you deflect it? Or do you reflect this behavior on other people? Stop and just think about it. Is this what you have been doing? So all it does is create another cycle of sadness, another cycle of hopelessness, another cycle of helplessness, because you have chosen to take this rejection and the loss and spiral down. And I am here to suggest to you today, rejection and loss is human. Because you're alive, you love. The minute you love, the minute you own, there's going to be a time you're going to lose it. There's going to be a time that very thing that you own and you love is going to reject you. It could be your job. It could be your spouse. It could be the love of your life. It could be your child. It could be a situation. This is human reactions. It happens and it goes round in a circle. And today you are rejected. Tomorrow, the very same way that you were rejected in is where you will be accepted. So choose your emotional state, because you have the ability to shift your emotional state. So I'm saying, choose to be grateful that the rejection has happened. It doesn't happen overnight. Don't get me wrong. It took me a couple of years to get to where I am. And today I still face rejection. But my response is different. So just like I said, what preparedness do you have unconsciously to respond in an empathetic way? I asked you that question earlier on. Well, from experience and my choice of body response. How do I respond? My self-language. So in my opinion, being empathetic with self is a good first step, because it gives me an understanding of how I respond to situations. And I hope this is true for you. So my challenge is involved in writing down my responses to self and seeking to be a better version of myself. I encourage you to do the same thing. Well, in conclusion, compassionate empathy is what we all strive for. We want to get there, but we have to be careful that as we are compassionate, it doesn't drag us down to forget about ourselves. We need to apply it to self. It concerns our intellect, our emotions, and our actions. And as Daniel Goleman said, he is the guru of emotional intelligence. With this kind of empathy, we not only understand a person's predicament and feel with them, but are spontaneously moved to help if needed. So, question as we leave our session today: where will you practice compassionate empathy in the following days? And I do hope that your answer includes starting with self. The 3 takeaways for today: how to be mindfully empathetic is choose to cultivate your awareness, number 1. Number 2, pay attention to your self language. Number 3, nurture your attitude of self empathy. Remember, you have the ability to shift your emotional state. Use it. Well, the recording of this episode will be available on our YouTube channel, which is LMC Consultancy, by this evening. Now, I'm giving away a copy of my book this May. Subscribe and like my YouTube channel and send me a DM here on IG at lucy.macridis for your chance to win a book. And a shout out to Doris Kayume. That is your book that I'm holding right there. I'm waiting for you to collect it. Tuesday Talks at 3 turns 3 on June 23. Whoa, I said it. I thought I wasn't going to say it properly. Look out on our social media pages for great offers and giveaways during this month as we build up to Tuesday Talks at 3, turning 3 on June 23. Our self-paced courses are available. You can find Discover You and Customer Service on lmcconsultancy.com. You want to hop on there and get yourself one of those courses. Episode 5 of the Mindful May series is the last episode, and this is about mindful social skills. We are moving from dealing with self to dealing with everybody else. Let us help build one another, and until then, be kind to yourselves. Bye-bye now.